Welcome to our beginner video on wire attachments. Today I'm going to show you some basics with jewelry making and some basic wire. I'll talk about each of these easy open attachment methods with wire, and then I'll talk about some permanent closed ones as well. So to start with, what you're going to need, we have our snips up top, our cutters. We have round pliers with the rounded ends. We have flat that have these kind of flattened edges when they go together. It's like a sandwich. And then we have our needle nose pliers. These are the ones that come to more of a point like the round, but when you look inside, they've got a flat edge that sandwiches together. So all of those kind of assist in what you're doing. And as far as the wire that I'm using, I like to use 18 gauge wire. So it says 18 AWG. It's kind of a good mid-range wire. I'm using copper. Copper's extra bendy. And then I also have a scrap of much thicker wire and an 18 gauge in brass that I'm going to show you one of the permanent closures. So why would we want to attach with wire? A lot of times worn pieces of jewelry like earrings have attachments like this. So if you wear earrings and you have any dangly earrings, they have ear wire that actually has like a jump ring closure at the bottom, and that is how you can hang other elements on it. So the easy open ones are really nice because you can reopen the circles and reclose them again. If you see there's a little gap for each of those. The negative of that is that if someone yanks on an earring or a chain, or if the openings come together, so if I have two jump rings that are attached, and they twirl and they kind of meet up here, those are weak points and they can come apart. The benefit of the closed is that it is more permanent, so it will not come apart, but you cannot reopen over and over again. All right, so let's start out with something as simple as, I covered jump rings in another video, but just to refresh or review, when you're making jump rings, you usually want to make more than one, and you always start off with more wire than not. And to make a jump ring, you need to find something round. Typically we use steel or a jump ring maker. I have just a pen here, but I would put a little bit on one side, start by wrapping around. That little extra becomes my like handle. And then I keep wrapping, and it's kind of like making a coil. And by doing this, now when I take it off, I have 3 jump rings that are usable. I would cut off this straight edge, I would cut off this straight edge, and then I'd cut 1, 2, 3 down the middle, and I'd have a bunch of different jump rings that I can use. All right, an S-hook. Covered this one again. I'm gonna just go over it one more time. I like to start with a piece about 1 inch long. Depends how big of a S-hook that you wanna make. But if I use my round pliers, I'm gonna start on one end. I'm gonna leave a little bit extra. I'm gonna bend it around until it connects. Okay, I'm making kind of a bigger one. If I go with a shorter piece, it could make a smaller one. And you can try and make the loops the same size or different depending on where you hold it in your round pliers. Okay, my S-hook. And then lastly, an eye pin. These are really nice. You can actually do a double-ended eye pin. It's kind of like an S-hook, but an eye pin is really nice to attach beads onto, things like that. So to make an eye pin, I'm going to make a circle around. If you notice, mine looks different than what you see there because it's leaning to the side. So if you want it more symmetrical, you grab where it attaches and stand it up. All right, so now the end part of each of these things that I just created would be that I'd want to take a steel block and a mallet or a hammer, and I would want to press on each of those. And the reason for that is to work harden them so they become a little bit stronger. Okay, so I put this on my steel block, hammer it down. It becomes more work hardened and rigid. It also makes sure that my ends connect a little closer. So that's really important. If you want to hang things on it, you want to make sure those ends are not apart like this. You want them together. All right, permanent closure ones. This is what I want to focus on a little bit more. So to start with, especially if you're making like a special pendant or a special earring. This is just a really nice way to begin. So if I'm going to do some other important or interesting shape, I want to leave myself enough wire to do that. And I'm going to start with this permanent closure piece. So what I'm going to do is, I would say about 1 inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch down, I'm going to take my round pliers and I'm going to wrap my wire all the way around until I get basically a cross. So you can see this is perpendicular to the wire that's going down. Now I'm going to take my flat pliers and I'm going to hold where they fold over each other. Okay, it's just a nice way to hold on to it. And this now becomes my handle. And I'm going to try and keep it as perpendicular as possible to the bottom here. And I'm going to twist the wire around and around and around. I probably should have left myself a little bit more. So this closure becomes very permanent. It's not loose, it's connected, so it will not come apart. Now to get this end part down, well, I have some choices. I could snip it off right there, but I like to have a few more loops. So what I'm going to do is grab my needle nose pliers. I'll hold the loop with one hand, and then with my flat pliers, I'm going to take and keep twisting it because they are stronger than my hands until I get it all the way closed. Now I have some choices here. It's still sticking out a little bit, so I'm going to go and try and fold it in. Now these are artistic choices, so it's up to you. My wires are a little bit split apart, so if that's something that bugs you, you can go back with your flat pliers and you can try and scrunch them together. If you're okay with it, you can leave it the way it is, but just an aesthetic choice. Now this end, I could either file off or I could snip it. I'd probably snip it, and see how my loop's kind of leaning to the side? I could also grab it and stand it up a little more. Okay, now I could work on whatever I'm doing with this. I could design the rest of my shape, and this will not come apart. Okay, the last one I'm going to show you is if you have two separate pieces of wire and you're trying to attach them together for some reason. They might be the same size, different sizes, but I think it's important to know what to do. If I just go like this and start twisting, they're not going to really stay together well. You really need a perpendicular attachment. So what that means is if one wire is going this way, you need a cross or a T in the other direction. So if I know I'm going to have this straight edge, I'm going to take and hold my other wire at a T, and I need to have a little bit on both sides. We need to have that handle to help wrap it around. Okay, so I'm holding it in this T shape, and I'm going to start twisting around as tight as I can. Now, if I notice that this loop is a little bit loose, before moving on to my next part, I can take my flat nose pliers and I can try to pull just to make sure it's as tight as possible. And the goal is you can do about 3 loops, and that should hold it pretty steadily. If I want it super tight, I might need to grab 2 pairs of pliers and pull in the opposite directions. Okay, so that is now incredibly tight. If I want to make it a little bit prettier, I can grab and tighten those up. And now I can start whatever I'm doing with this one. And then if I know I'm going to attach it back here, I just have to leave enough so that I have a handle once again, and I can attach it on the other side. So it has to be perpendicular while I'm starting. So once again, I would bend it around as tight as I can. If you need pliers to do it really tightly, you can. And then I can cut off my extra, so I could snip these off. And then if I needed to perfect this shape, I could do a little bit more of that. All right, so these are all different ways that you can attach wire together and create interesting pieces of jewelry.